The zero product property is probably one of the most used properties in all of algebra and many of the upper levels because sometimes we use this to find roots, zeros, solutions, and usually we use this to find x-intercepts for graphs. So what this really says is that if I have two items, A times B, and it's equal to 0. So I multiplied two things together and I got 0 as an answer. Well, then one of those things, either A or B, sometimes both, have to be equal to 0. Okay, so if A times B equals 0, then A equals 0 or B equals 0. Okay, so this is one of these things where I think it makes more sense for us to go ahead and show you one of the uses for it, and then we can kind of look at it from that standpoint of how is this going to be used for our algebra. So if I gave you something that said solve, and let's say the problem was x squared plus 5x equals 0. Alright, so there's a lot of math behind this, a lot of things that could be done. But the very first thing I would look at is I would look and notice that these both have an x in common. So I would take out the x, I would factor that out, and it would leave me a problem that looked like this. Well, now notice, now I have two things multiplied together that equal 0. So what does that tell me? Well, it tells me by the property that either x is equal to 0 or x plus 5 is equal to 0. That's what this tells me that's going to happen now. So now I can go ahead and say, well, the very first thing I notice is that's already a solution. X equals 0 is an answer. X is already by itself. Okay, what do I do on this side though? Well, we'll use the same technique, which is we're going to go ahead and get rid of that 5 by balancing it out, subtracting it from both sides. This creates that 0 that we were looking for earlier. And that leaves me then x on this side. And on the right-hand side, we get negative 5. So my solution would be x equals 0 or x equals negative 5. Alright, well, what happens if we had something a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more complicated? And we're going to start off with it just sort of in its broken down state already. So let's say that I already gave it to you in its two components. One term of x minus 2 and one term of x plus 3. Two different quantities. And when they multiply together, we got 0. Okay, so now I'm looking for what are the zeros or what are the solutions for this problem. We'll use that same technique. We'll apply the property that says, all right, well, we have x minus 2 equals 0, or we have x plus 3 is equal to 0. All right, well, let's start on the left. How do I get rid of that negative 2? Well, I need to add 2. We're always trying to balance things out here. And the very first, most important is to figure out how to get this to become 0. Alright, so then on the left-hand side, the x drops down. And on the right-hand side, the 2 drops down. We've got our answer for that first part. Let's apply those same rules to the right. So I'm going to subtract 3 now. And when I do that, what happens to this positive 3 minus 3? There's our 0 that we've been trying to get. And so the x will drop down. And on the right-hand side, we get 0 minus 3, which is negative 3. And we now have our solutions. And that is thanks to the zero product property.